If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at lptv.org. Lakeland Public Television presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Hi, welcome to Common Ground. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. On this episode of Common Ground, join Brad Wegscheid as he receives a grant to continue his arts education, learning advanced Raku firing techniques from Pat and Ken Larson of Larson Clayworks.
My name is Brad Wegscheid. I'm a visual artist located in Wadena, Minnesota. This past year I applied for a grant through the Lakes Region Art Council, which is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. And I applied for a grant to learn more about ceramic firing with Raku. Now I gotta try and decide how I'm gonna load this up. I've been doing ceramic work for a number of years, and I've just dabbled with Raku work in the past. With the grant, I wanted to learn more about Raku work so that I could get off to a good start with learning that process. When I'm putting these pieces in here, I have to make sure they're out of the way of the lid when it comes down, and that they're out of the way of the burners as much as possible. My grant was broken into 3 parts. The first part was to learn with some artists that have been doing this a while and to educate me and make me smart on the Raku firing process. The second part was to purchase some equipment and supplies so that I could do some Raku work. And then the third part was to use that equipment to do some demonstrations for the public so that they can also gain some knowledge and experience with Raku, and then to create a body of work that can be displayed and shared with the public. I'm gonna light this bad boy. So this past summer I did demonstrations in 3 locations. One of them was at M State in Fergus Falls, where I did a couple demonstrations. And then the work was displayed at the Cadets Gallery in Fergus Falls. Now I'm going to light the burner, and this is going to go whoosh. The second location that I did demonstrations at was at Turtle Fest in Perm in June. And then the work was displayed at the Public Library in Perm. The third location, and the one that I did this spring, was at the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. And then the work was displayed there as well. I think any community gains greatly by being exposed to art and seeing the work. If anybody's not familiar with ceramics either, this is what I stuck in the kiln, stuff that looked like this. Artists tend to do their work squirreled away in their studio and nobody sees that process. And especially in rural Minnesota, people don't even know where the artists are. And I think it's a great value for people to be able to get out and see what's created and see how it's made. Art's being cut from schools everywhere, so there's so many people that they don't know how art is made. And by doing demonstrations and getting the public involved, it's a great way to expose them and educate them. The first pieces I'm going to take out have some glaze on them. When I first decided that I wanted to apply for a grant, I decided that I'd like to learn more about the Raku process. I've been fascinated with that process and that way of firing work for years. When I was in the gallery in Duluth, I saw Pat and Ken Larson's work. They do some magnificent work with ravens and monolithic type pieces. And once I saw their work, I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's the kind of work that I want to produce. That's the quality and the expertise that I want to try and achieve.
It's so hard for an artist, especially of Scandinavian descent, to talk about their own work, but it's clay sculpture.
We do pieces that are conceived as sculpture, not as pottery. You don't ever think, well, I'm going to make a pot, which is in direct contrast to some of the things that you filmed earlier today.
So once I came up with a master plan for my grant and what I was going to do with the state funding, I sent them an email and said, introduce myself. My name is Brad Wegscheid. I'm looking at applying for a grant and doing this process, and I would like to study with someone that's been doing this. I admire the texture of your work. I enjoy what you do. If I got funding and could pay you for your services, would you be willing to take me under your wing and make me smart?
I think one evening I just went down to collect our email, and here's an email from Brad who explains his situation and that he was interested in learning from us, which I thought, wow, hey, cool. And better yet, he's going to apply for a grant and pay us? Wow. We arranged for a meeting just to see if we clicked.
So we decided amongst us that I would go over there and visit with them for a weekend, a day, and I could meet them and they could meet me, and they could determine if I was worthy of putting up with, and I could decide if they really were the fine artists that their work showed them to be. After I met with them for a day, we synced up and we got along well, and they decided that I should come and study with them. So I applied for my grant and I submitted it.
And sometime in between all of that, I was out trying to pull a tree away from our house and cut it down, and managed to break my ankle and really put myself out of commission.
In the process of submitting the grant, and as all that paperwork takes time, Ken was cutting down a tree in his yard, broke his leg.
And Brad was scheduled for this meeting, came over and helped us fire some things, and where I was just unable to move some things around, and they were just too big for Pat to move.
And then in the spring of that year, they contacted me and said, oh, hey, if you can come over here and do some grunt work for us, you can study with us, and we can share some knowledge with you, and you can be our hands. So even before I got my grant, I was able to go over there and work with them and for a week, and I stayed at their house, and they were kind, and I learned some stuff.
Plus, we just hit it off. We work well together, and I think I am learning almost as much as he thinks he is. So
then once I successfully got the grant, I went back there in the fall and spent another 2 weeks with them, and we fired some more work, and I learned some more from them.
How are we doing?
I think Pat and Ken have a great system for firing, and they're definitely used to working with 4 hands and not 6. With the extra feet there and the extra hands, it was an extra challenge for them, I think, as well, but it was fun, and they were excited to share their knowledge.
What we did in the Raku building today with Brad was to allow him to participate in a firing, as well as observe us doing some of the pieces that he would possibly be able to incorporate his own ideas into.
And then those glazed pieces that I had that you wanted to do with the newspaper, I learned a lot from them, especially the difference between the types of wood and green wood and dry wood and leaves and feathers and straw and newspaper, and how the different types of material have different effects and different sorts of carbon that it can impart upon the ceramic work that you're doing.
So you pick the container that you want to have for the piece, and we also try and set up all the containers so if we can, just the ones we're going to be using later are at the bottom of the stack or farther away. The first ones are closer. Save yourself a little work, because this is a lot of work. Okay, right now we are getting reduction containers prepped, loaded, so that when we take things out of the kiln, everything's ready to go.
Prepping the containers that we're firing in is a very important process, and I learned a lot about that process with them. Prior to working with them, I would have just dumped some stuff in a container and thrown some work on top of it. Just throw new stuff on top?
You can just kind of make a little nest, and there's some...
Pat and Ken have all kinds of crusty creosote-soaked containers that they've used over the years. They were kind enough to explain to me as we're packing these containers as to how you pack them and what the various materials do and how it affects the firing, and how deep you want the stuff.
Make kind of a fluffy nest for things. Don't pack it, so when it sits into things, you want it to kind of surround it.
And all of that affects the final end piece. Whether you put the piece in the container upside down or sideways or face down, all of those affect how the fire and the smoke hit the piece and how the final piece is finished.
When we're getting ready to do a firing, we try to size the reduction containers that we're using for the pieces that we are going to blacken to the piece. You don't want a little piece going into a great big container, because it usually just doesn't work very well. Sometimes you end up with just too much air in the container with the piece and it doesn't blacken nicely. You get gray spots on it when you don't want any.
One of the things that I very quickly learned from the Larsons when doing this process is the setup. As the kiln is firing up to temperature, organization is key to Raku from a safety standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. If you're tripping over containers and lids and stuff that you have piled all over, not only are you going to potentially damage work, you could end up at the hospital. I mean, you're working with work that is 1700 degrees, and if you drop it on your foot, you're going to know it. It's not really flat as that.
The containers get real heavy when, particularly the clay ones. So, you know, when you're having to pick all this stuff up and move it around, you don't want to have to do any more than you have to. When you're doing a Raku firing, you really need to have everything ready to go before you start pulling anything from the kiln, because you want it to go straight from the kiln into the container that you've got ready. So if you waste a lot of time getting a container ready, your kiln gets too warm while you are doing that, and then you need to cool the piece off some before you can put it in the container. It's just a good idea to have everything set up, ready to go, and then your firing comes off as smoothly as possible.
So Pat and Ken spend a lot of time as the kiln is firing to think about how the work is going to go from the kiln out the door and into the container safely, effectively, and quickly.
We're over 15. We need to be turning it back.
Quick is also a very important thing because the work is rapidly losing temperature. So you got to get it in the combustible material as quickly as possible before it gets too cold. So the containers are laid in a hoop or circular fashion around your work area. This way you can drop the piece in, grab the lid, drop it on the container and smother it as quickly as possible, and then go ahead and grab the next piece and move it in there without tripping, stumbling, falling, and burning yourself or others.
There's more on the stove, or is this what was on the stove?
Anytime you're working with something hot, whether it's 350 degrees in your oven in the house or 1700 degrees in a Raku kiln, there is potential for danger. Even the outside of the kiln can burn you if you stumble and lose your balance. If you've ever opened up your oven door when you're baking, you know instantly that heat that comes up out of there. And imagine that times 10, and that's what you're dealing with in a Raku kiln.
Okay, I'm going to fan this kiln again to bleed off some temperature.
So you need to have some sort of a way to keep that heat from going past you instead of onto you. When Pat and Ken do their Raku, they have a leather coat that they use. The leather offers enough protection from the heat. The problem with a leather coat is it also has insulation, so you heat up very quickly inside of that, especially on a summer day. I purchased an old fireman's coat on eBay for a mere $40, which protects me from the heat and the radiation of the kiln. This is my face shield to protect my face from the radiant heat that is going to blast out of the kiln as we open it up to remove the pieces. I like my eyebrows, and I guess I'd like to keep them on my face. In addition to the shield to protect my face from the heat, I've also got an old fireman's jacket which also protects the heat from soaking in and burning me. And then I also have my Kevlar and fiberglass gloves to keep my hands safe and also unburnt.
Okay, now we're pulling the horsehair stuff first, correct?
For the record, I am nervous about taking my one piece off the top of yours.
You'll do okay.
So not only did they say, here, do this, but they were very good with the technical side of it. Oh, we're doing this because of the result that we're looking for.
I thought Brad's pulling that piece out. Or are you going to demo for him quick?
Just relax, get loose like these are.
Yes, it was very helpful. And then as I asked questions, they were also eager to answer and add additional knowledge that I would not have even thought of asking.
Reach in and then gently bring them in on the edge of the piece.
And I'll tell you if you don't have it.
Yeah.
Because I can see from the side.
And if you drop it, we'll get it later.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Get it down, down farther. There you go. You get that into the can. I got to come through here, grab this, and dump it in there. And then the idea is that, which way is the wind from?
North.
One piece done, no burns acquired. We're off to a good start.
You always put the piece so the wind will take the smoke away from you, you hope. All right, we're doing horsehair next.
Watching Pat and Ken Larson do their Horsehair Raku work is truly a testament to the years that they've been doing this and how they work as a cooperative team.
What's the kiln temperature? If it needs to get down to 1450, take it down.
We are right in on 1450.
Here I'm putting some sawdust, planer shavings into a bowl of warm sand to darken the piece at the bottom after we take it out of the kiln. And this is the horsehair that we'll be using after we put the human hair on the piece. It is my hair. All right, let's go. Ready?
Okay.
That definitely looks like you guys have done that a few times.
Countless. The reason I hang a lot of hair is because some of it just ends up falling on the floor or doesn't work well. So you want to make sure you got plenty.
Now, how hot is that with your fingers that close to it? Is that getting warm or no?
Yeah, you don't want to touch it.
On a bigger piece, it gets really, you dart in and sometimes you're shaking your hands off just to, ouch, yeah.
Like that?
Fingertips aren't too bad. This piece is losing heat really fast.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
In fact, I don't think we're going to get too much more on it.
Just get it on where there's nothing that should be. I think if something will stick over there, maybe.
The sawdust, it's speckled real nice.
Yes.
You want to just reuse that sand?
It's hot now. Yeah.
And would you take a stick and knock the sand off the bottom?
Where is your bigger stick?
If I...
Gloves would leave a mark.
They would?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, if the bricks or the gloves would...
The bricks don't.
Really?
The gloves will leave a mark. Yep.
Huh. I think after watching Pat and Ken so well choreographed and so well oiled that I have a long ways to go.
Ready?
Let's do it.
I don't know if you want to adjust that lid a little bit. It's a little cockeyed. There, that's better. Nice sawdust, Brad. It's doing a good job.
Oh, is that the oak shavings there?
Yeah.
I like that speckled look a lot.
All right, no screwing around. Work fast. Let's go to some longer stuff here.
I like how you guys are doing that and not even communicating. You're just rotating the pot and going with the flow.
I don't think we talk much when we're doing it most of the time unless there's a problem.
If you horsehaired a piece and then put it back in the kiln and heated it back up and did it again, would that ruin the horsehair that you've already got on it?
It'll burn it off.
It would? Okay.
It'll burn it off, but when you sprinkle it again, sometimes you get some little white shadows where the hair was the first time, which looks really neat, but it's one of those things that you can't count on.
Right, right.
Add a little at the bottom where it'll work. The bottom of the piece will always stay hotter, so you can lose heat up at the top and it won't burn on anymore, but you can add a little bit down at the bottom.
Focus is really important.
Mm-hmm.
We're losing heat.
Yep. Looks good. There's not all that much sticking to the bottom. Okay.
It was a real treat to witness them doing this work. I really think that their horsehair raku work has much more precision and finished design style to it than a lot of the work you see. Their hair is not just thrown onto the piece randomly. There's a linear fashion that their work has that follows the curves of the vessel, and it just has a very complete look to it.
I look forward to continuing friendship with him, and I almost feel, well, we'll just forget that part.
The work that I did to fire with Pat and Ken was mostly all experimental work to test structural integrity of a piece and to see how a burnished surface would appear different than an unburnished surface, and how a glazed surface would act different than an unglazed surface, and to see how the different wood chips would react to the piece. So most of the work that I did was not done with the idea of this will be a beautiful finished piece, but done with the idea of let's see how this breaks, or let's see what happens when I do this. So all of this work was a lot of fun to make, but it was very educational based to see how things react to the fire and to the kiln and to the process. And I learned a great deal because of that.
I'm going to put some around the edge, and you can push that in tight.
I do like learning on my own. I like playing, I like experimenting. A lot of times though, when you work with people that have been doing this for so long, it's like someone threw open a window. You see new possibilities that you wouldn't have seen on your own until you've been doing it for 10 years. So not only can you learn and come up with new ideas from your own experience, but you also can gain and siphon off some of their ideas and thoughts and processes, so you can have vast knowledge much quicker.
All Ready?
Yep.
I think it's really important for artists who've had a long career to be able to pass along some of their ideas, how you went about doing something, how you found out about this effect. Save them a little trouble, because we spent a lot of time learning the hard way. Boy, it's worth a lot for us and for them.
And I've always felt that with my own work that there's always room for improvement. And why have somebody else start from zero and have to try to figure out what I've done and then hopefully improve on it? I'll save them a step or two. And
somebody's got to carry on too. I mean, we're both over 60, so it's like, you know, I don't want to keep busting my butt forever. I would like to take it a little bit easier and enjoy doing some of the things that I haven't been able to do because we had to make a living.
Yeah, anybody that thinks that this is an easy life, I mean, go for it, man.
I love sharing with other people the art and the process, and whether I'm sharing my knowledge or knowledge that I've gained from the Larsons, it's wonderful to pass along that knowledge and get more people familiar with the process and get them intrigued. Several people that were at my demonstrations who've either done Raku in the past or are interested are now all fired up to do their own work. And I think that's great. I think that's wonderful to get people away from the TV and away from sitting on the couch all night long and get their hands dirty and do some work.
I was going to put a little bit of reduction material.
Thank you so much for watching. Join us again next week for another episode of Common Ground. If you have an idea for a Common Ground piece that pertains to North Central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3014. To view any episode of Common Ground online, visit us at lptv.org. To order episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this episode of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.